Hello there. What is going on, everyone? We're talking Star Wars Legion today in a very, very interesting topic. Could there be a major shakeup coming to Legion at Ministravaganza? This is the topic of today's video. If you haven't by now, if you haven't already seen it, I have had a really nice long interview with AMG's Will Shick, and we talked at length about all of their games, but largely about Star Wars Legion. And there were a lot of topics discussed. I'm going to kind of go over some of that. I'm not going to cover everything. I think it was a really good interview, covered a lot of the design process and some hints about Legion, both past, present, and future. There were some of, we're going to talk about a little bit of that, but at your leisure, definitely go back. I'll put a link in the video description below. You can go back and check that out. There are timestamps for the game-specific discussions, so you can check out all of that without having to wade through stuff that maybe you're not interested in. But I do encourage you, if you can, to watch the whole thing, because there are game design tidbits sprinkled throughout. And while the bookmarks are there to kind of tell you where to go for the majority of a game's discussion, a lot of games are referenced outside of their respective sections as well as things that apply to all of them. Like the opening talked a lot about Adepticon and Worlds and GTOs and all of that, which apply to all games and aren't necessarily in your games or your favorite game's specific section. But that's what we're going to talk about today. There was definitely some teasers for big news coming for Star Wars Legion, and why I'm talking about it today is because it's not just something big, it's something big specific to not being new product related, which means possibly a rules change up or a new edition or something like that. We're going to talk about that in this video. So if you guys haven't already, make sure you're subscribed. We're doing a $25 Amazon gift card giveaway again. So if you want to have a chance to enter to win this one, you just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. It's as simple as that. Let's jump into our basically my theory crafting and part of my discussion with Will Shick. I kind of started talking about the Bad Batch. We talked a lot about design and like certain doors that may have been closed at one point that are now open. Led us to some discussion of Sabine and Star Wars Rebels and the Ghost Crew, and how it would have been kind of under the original intent for the game. It would have been near impossible to get all of the Ghost Crew into the game because you only have 2 commanders, 2 operatives, and you have more than 4 characters in the Ghost Crew. Of course, there's a lot of different ways to be able to do something like that, but we talked for a pretty good amount about doing the Ghost Crew and how that would contrast against like characters like Sabine versus the Bad Batch, which are one unit of lots of named characters, versus taking those individual characters and pulling them out and having them by themselves, like how Sabine is. And I think it's a very interesting discussion, but an interesting part, and why I'm mentioning it here, is that it did draw a lot of contrast between what you can do in a game like Star Wars Shatterpoint and in a game like Star Wars Legion. And I think an interesting thing is, I didn't even ask this question before Will Shick got to it, and he actually brought it up, and he said a lot of people ask us why do Shatterpoint when you already have Star Wars Legion. I had not even asked him this, but he said this, and it doesn't mean I wasn't going to ask it, but it's one of those questions where I kind of already know the answer, because I already know that they were working on Shatterpoint before the merger happened. So there, that's a whole different reason. But as far as even if that weren't the case, why do both? And he took some time to illustrate the differences between these games, and I feel like on some level, he talked about wanting to do the Ghost Crew in Legion and how they could do it and how the door was open to do that. But then on another level, he illustrated that this is a big difference between Shatterpoint and Legion, and that you can have a crew of all heroes in Shatterpoint, whereas Legion is largely about the Stormtroopers, right? There's no denying the fact that core are part of that game, and you're gonna have more nameless troops in Star Wars Legion than you do in Star Wars Shatterpoint. Although the lines are a little blurred, because Star Wars Shatterpoint has nameless troops. It has squads of B1s, B1 battle droids. You got 3 on a base, so you run them, you're getting 2 bases as you're running 6 B1 battle droids. Lots of nameless troops. The Stormtroopers are nameless troops. The Clone Troopers are, nameless troops. And so you definitely have that also in Shatterpoint. And so There were multiple times, however, where Will Shick would describe, the Shatterpoint and Legion and try to highlight their differences as far as their scale and their scope. Uh, that also combining that with the fact that we talk about the reprints that they're doing. For example, no stormtroopers are going to be done. Every model that was done in the soft plastic, like these stormtroopers that I have here on screen, are being redone with new sculpts and with the new hard plastic, and they're going to be, they look like they're going to be in, much greater quality, much nicer. We'll probably paint up much better, and we'll look. I'm sure they're going to look awesome. Stormtroopers are fun to paint regardless if you have your white method down. I like the way I do Stormtroopers. I'm looking forward to checking out new Stormtroopers. But we talked about shelf space. And we talked about why it's sometimes hard for retailers to want to get restocks and to get products that's already been out, that maybe a bunch of Legion players already have all the Stormtroopers they're going to need. If you've been playing Legion for a while and you play Empire, I'm guessing you probably have about all of the Stormtroopers you're likely to want to field already. And while some Legion players would be real happy to pick up an extra unit of Stormtroopers to paint them up and to have like a cleaner looking Stormtrooper force, heck, some might even, completely buy all of their Stormtroopers all over again. I think the majority probably won't be so keen to do that. And so how do you get this product that's effectively like a reprint to move well enough that it will be popular? Of course, it'll give new players access, but that old players will be buying it too. How do you do that? That's one of those keys, and I think one of the ways to do it is to have a better product, and that's with Stormtroopers. But I kind of combine that all together to kind of shed some light on something that Will Shick said at the end of our interview, and that he said that we need to stay tuned for Ministravaganza. He did highlight that Legion and Shatterpoint and MCP will all be featured at Ministravaganza. He did name those games specifically. That doesn't preclude the possibility of other games, but those are the three that are locked in so far. And he said, for fans of those games, definitely stick around. You won't want to miss it. There's going to be some major knock your socks off kind of stuff. And that wasn't specifically applying to new products, because I asked him, I was like, well, what could you have to spoil? He's like, we always got some stuff up our sleeve, but it's not just new product. So basically, he was trying to say that there's something outside of new product that's going to definitely be shaking these games up. So for Legion, and especially with all the talk that we had about Legion, I put all of this together, and I feel like there's a big change coming to Legion, and a change that might, in some ways, encourage people to buy more Stormtroopers than they already have, to make sure that shelf space is moving and retailers continue to see old products still be worthwhile to reorder. B, encourage sale of all the new resculpts. C, make sure that this game that is already doing really, really well, by all accounts, still doing really, really well, I should say, has been out forever, it's still selling strong. I think it's one of Asmodee as a corporation, as one of Asmodee's top selling brands is Star Wars Legion specifically, according to one of the Embracer Group reports that I was reading. Ticket to Ride definitely, I think, is number one overall, which is a little surprising to me because it seems like a game you buy one of and then you're done, but it has such wider appeal and there's so many different versions of Ticket to Ride that they've started to make it like not necessarily one and done, because you can have Ticket to Ride, you can have Ticket to Ride Europe, Ticket to Ride New York, all this other stuff. So I get that, and maybe that's part of the appeal there. But Star Wars Legion is selling really, really well. It is included in that discussion of Asmodee's top games. And so, how do you get all these veteran players to rebuy a lot of the same stuff? I think, your reprints like your Han and Leia are easy to do, because a really nice sculpt of Han or Leia, very, very cool. No problem there. But, how do we get them to rebuy Stormtroopers? Well, obviously, the new sculpts might do it for some. What if the army limits or the army building was changed? And this is something that I was thinking about. For example, I might have 3 units of Stormtroopers, but what if instead of 3 core, maybe I needed 4 core or 6 core or something like that? Maybe the number will go even higher than 6. It wouldn't surprise me if it were 8. Could be a points increase as well to justify something like this. I mean, if you want to sell twice as much product, what if you just turn every game into a grand army? Now, this is definitely speculative. I don't know that something like this is going to happen. I think if they were going to increase the points, they probably wouldn't go up quite to 1,600, although that would be a grand army. And we have a grand army. We also talked about Gungans also. Of course, it's on my wish list. I don't know if that's going to happen. But if you did turn every game into a grand army, hypothetically, that would, from a certain point of view, I encourage a lot of people to double their army size or to quit playing altogether. So that could be pretty risky. Now, that's purely speculative. Let's go on to some stuff that I think is maybe a little bit more reasonable. If you increase army size just a little bit, it might not have too much of an impact on games and may allow certain characters to be able to be fielded. For example, expensive units like the Ghost Crew. And that kind of takes me full circle to where when I started talking about Sabine at the beginning, and like how can you fit like Spectre Cell, all of the Ghost Crew in a list like this, and have it still be, or in a game like this, but have it still be largely infantry based. One way to do that might be to increase the points a little bit, or it might be to decrease the point cost of everything, such to basically allow you to fit more stuff on your tabletop. That could be a thing, a major points rebalancing that effectively lets you put everything on the table that you want to have on the table, and basically to have larger games. That definitely could be a theme, because I feel like that was, after reflecting on my interview with Will Shick, I feel like that was a common theme when he would compare and contrast Shatterpoint and Legion, was the scale of those games being so very different. And I sometimes think about, I've had a lot of games of Legion that weren't quite so large in scale, especially hero-centric games. You may have, if you've run Separatists, there's like a 9 saber list you can run, or I used to run 7 sabers before Asajj Ventress came out. But like if you run multiple heroes, multiple named characters, multiple Jedi or Sith, or lightsaber users in general tend to be fairly expensive. If you're running a lot of those type of characters, you have very few points left over for stormtroopers, so you could end up with a Republic list that has only 3 units of clone troopers, and then everything else is dedicated for heroic and really larger than life characters, your Anakins and Obi-Wans, or your Yoda and R2 and Padme, and then maybe a tank or something like that. But you can actually have lists that are a relatively small number of models in Star Wars Legion, and from a certain point of view, considering that you also have nameless troops in Shatterpoint, on some level they might not seem that different. Now, of course, not every game of Star Wars Legion has multiple heroes and more than half your points. Like if you're running the Empire and you have Palpatine and Darth Vader in the same list, doesn't happen that often, but I've done it. It's fun, especially with Burst of Speed. But if you do stuff like that, you're gonna have very few points left over for stormtroopers, and that a list like that, Palpatine, Royal Guard, Vader, and stormtroopers, can feel like it's very few activations. It can feel almost like a Shatterpoint size list if you look at the number of models, the number of characters that are on the table. So that's one of the reasons why I feel like maybe they'll be looking to kind of expand those limits. If one of the goals is to potentially bring in larger units like the Ghost Crew, multiple heroic units all working together, but also increase the size of the game so where it truly feels like it's more about the armies clashing on a grand scale where you're zoomed out farther, as opposed to Shatterpoint being more zoomed in farther. It's kind of hard to do that when the models are not the same scale, but in a similar enough scale that I think a lot of people on the street might not initially know the difference between the two if they were to just glance at them briefly. Whereas opposed to like a 10mm war game or something like that might have AT-ATs that are only like this tall, a game like that might be a lot easier to do grand scale stuff. With something like Legion, I think the only real option you have to do outside of just changing the scale of the game, which I don't think they're going to do that, is to raise the points and raise the number of models you can put on the table. Now, there's an issue with that, though. And the issue with doing something like that, I think, is that you run a very dangerous risk of drastically slowing down the game if you were to. I don't expect them to actually double the number of models that we're putting on the table, but I could see them going from like 800 to 1,000, 1,200, somewhere in there. I could see them, but let's just say they go up to 1,000 points. That gives you the opportunity to run a couple more stormtroopers, might incentivize some people to buy a couple more boxes of the new prints. this, that, and the other thing might allow, some doorways open to fit all of the Spectre Cell, and then also have room for Ahsoka or something like that, right? So maybe it gives you some thematic heroes in your army and a little bit more of your core infantry type stuff, so you can have these bigger thematic battles. Maybe they want to open the door for big AT-ATs, which has never been done in an FFG game outside of Star Wars Rebellion or an AMG game. So either way, if they're looking to kind of really contrast Legion against Shatterpoint, I could see a big shakeup coming in the way of, kind of expanding the number of models you can put on the table. That might be a points increase. It might be a rebalancing of unit costs. And I think that's an interesting thing. I want to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think about something like that in the video description below. But also, if they're going to do something like that, there have been a lot of rumors that a second edition could be coming to Star Wars Legion. If they're going to do a big shakeup, a lot of times they don't call stuff a whole new edition. They use a lot of like 0.5s, and this might be like version 1.8 or something like that, or whatever. They don't like to call things a 2.0 ever since X-Wing, had a lot of blowback from its official second edition. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having new editions. As a matter of fact, I would love to see AMG say, yes, we're going to have new editions of Legion probably every couple of years. It's not going to require you to buy new models unless you want to. I mean, that's how GW does it. Age of Sigmar has a new edition coming out right now, and I don't have to buy anything new. There's new stuff I can optionally buy if I want some new sculpts and some things like that, but I don't have to buy the new stuff. I probably will buy some of it, and the rules are even going to be free, and all the unit cards and all that stuff. Everything that's changed is just going to be free to download, so I don't have to spend a cent on it. But I'll probably be encouraged to get the deluxe materials when they do come out, the new rulebook, the new war scrolls, and maybe some of the new units that are going to come out with the new edition. That's pretty cool. I would like to see them, follow something like that, because it allows them to continue to grow the game, for the game to evolve over time, for it not to get stale, for them to rebalance points, rebalance units, and not feel like they are stuck in a cage. But that's a risky thing, because a lot of people feel differently about that. But I think if you're going to do a big shakeup, and drastically try to contrast Legion against Shatterpoint, a new edition is probably the way to go, especially if it doesn't require you to, if you don't have to buy a new army. If you can still use everything that you've got in the new edition, I think that's probably the best way to proceed. Even if there's encouragements for you to buy some of the new stuff. I think once a lot of people see like the new Stormtroopers and the new hard plastic, a lot of people are going to definitely want those. I know I will definitely want to get some of them, if not all of them. So, it depends on how pretty they look, how well they paint up, and if they put anything new in the boxes. Now, I don't think a new edition is going to be drastically different than what we see. I don't think whatever shakeup they're going to do is going to be drastically different. And here is why. Ministravaganza is coming out in July. They said probably late July. We also know units like the Bad Batch for Star Wars Legion are also coming out in July. And we've also had a lot of units that just recently came out. We've seen the Bad Batch's unit card. We've seen a lot of the stuff that's coming. Not everything, but we've seen a lot of the stuff that's coming with the Bad Batch. If there was a massive shakeup to Legion that was going to change the way unit cards worked and all of that, we would have seen that reflected already on the Bad Batch's card. And from what we've seen, it looks totally normal. Now, granted, X-Wing had like 1.0 and 2.0 cards, so there's always a chance the Bad Batch could come with totally different cards. But we've already seen stuff like Clone Commandos and Range Troopers come out, and those didn't come with any kind of 2.0 cards or anything like that. So I feel like if they were about to announce a whole second edition for Legion, we would have probably seen signs of it already in the new expansions that just came out. And the fact that those look just like normal Legion units kind of points me to think that whatever changes they're going to make are, while they may be a big shakeup, it may not be so drastic as that it changes your cards. Like, it should be probably an easy to digest shakeup. Something like just saying, hey, the game is now 1,000 points and you need at least 4 core. That wouldn't be that, the learning curve for the community for a shakeup like that would be very, very small, because they're like, okay, let's go, let's do it. Some people might have blowback because they have to go out and buy something else. But so, I think there's a lot of speculation on what this is going to be. I'll definitely be watching Ministravaganza. We'll probably do a watch party. We'll probably do all of this stuff like we usually do with Ministravaganzas. I'll be bringing you all the news as it comes out, but I have definitely got my eyes peeled for Ministravaganza. What new stuff are they going to announce for Star Wars Legion? I also hope they announce new rules and stuff for Star Wars Shatterpoint, and I wouldn't mind some new optional formats for Marvel Crisis Protocol as well. A lot of fun games out there, and out of all of them, Legion's doing extremely well, and I'm very happy for it. It's one of the Asmodee's top games, and hopefully it continues to be for a very long time. I'll say this: AMG is putting a lot of investment in Star Wars Legion's future by reprinting the entire line, resculpting, hard plasticking the entire line of products, everything that's in soft plastic. This is a big undertaking. It means they really have high hopes for the future of this game, and so do I. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. We'll talk some more about this in the future. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. This has been it's been a pleasure to chat with you and talk to you about Star Wars gaming. May the Force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. Thank you so much to my patrons. You guys are amazing. The spice must flow, and always wash your socks.